So good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn Connors. I'm a longtime board member at Elephant Artists Relief Society, also known as EAR, and the lead of EAR's programming committee. First, I'd like to begin tonight in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth by honoring and acknowledging Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Ayaks and Nakota and Tsuut'ina nations. My apologies. EAR acknowledges that this territory is also cherished by the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We celebrate all nations, Indigenous and non, who honor this land. We are grateful to engage in an honest and eager process of reconciliation. We are all treaty people. On behalf of EAR and the EAR leadership team, I'd like to officially welcome you all to EAR's annual grad school talk. We are grateful to each of you for choosing to spend your evening with us. Thank you for being here. This evening's talk is one of an ongoing series of EAR events called Umbrella Talks. EAR's primary purpose is to empower artists in the Calgary and area to survive and thrive as artists. And these umbrella talks are one element of what we offer. This year, EAR celebrates 16 years of service to the local arts community. And even though EAR has grown and evolved over that time, our mission has remained the same: to provide practical resources that help sustain the livelihood and practice of artists in the Calgary area. To achieve this, EAR offers monthly professional and personal development talks, such as this one, a twice-monthly online artist meetup group on Facebook called Studio E, a wide variety of community resource information, which you can find on our website, elephantartistsrelief.com. And of course, our core program of emergency financial relief for artists who find themselves in a crisis situation. As a charitable organization, we rely substantially on you, the public, in the form of volunteerism, membership, and fundraising to do what we do. You can help us by raising awareness about EAR, and if you can, please consider donating online. Our heartfelt thanks go out to all of those who have already gifted EAR in the past. This year, to celebrate EAR's Sweet 16, we are encouraging our supporters to contribute a monthly donation of $16 to mark this anniversary. Every dollar donated is allocated to providing relief for artists in times of need. And when you purchase an EAR membership, the proceeds from that go directly to support EAR's admin and programming, like the event you're watching right now. One more thing, throughout the presentation, we ask that you keep your mics on mute, and also please turn off your cameras so there's minimal background interference. Please feel free to use the chat box to write your questions as they come up, and we will start a record of those for the Q&A portion of the evening. Now, before I pass you along to Marianne Elder, our presenter for the evening, I'll tell you a little bit about her. For over 20 years, Marianne Elder has worked in galleries, higher education, and nonprofit art organizations, and has developed exhibitions and education programming in both the US and Canada. Marianne's experience includes being an adjunct professor, teaching in the MA and PhD Arts and Culture Management and Museum Studies programs, and BFA and MFA Visual Arts program at Claremont Graduate University and the University of California, Irvine. She served 8 years as the Associate Vice President, Student Affairs at AU Arts, overseeing recruitment and admissions and student services. She spent 6 years as the MFA program administrator for Claremont Graduate University. She was the senior curator at the Art Gallery of Calgary, gallery director at East and Peggy Phelps Galleries, and collections manager for the Capital Collections Foundation, USA. She is passionate about sharing her knowledge and experience and has developed professional practices, workshops for emerging creative professionals. Marianne has been presenting these grad school talks as part of our Umbrella Talks series, and she has also been our much-loved administrative manager here at Elephant Artist Relief Society since 2019. And now, without further ado, I will pass you along to Marianne Elder. Enjoy the evening, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Carolyn. I really appreciate it. I'm just going to share a screen because I have a presentation to go along with this and also to keep me on track. And if you have any questions, as Carolyn said, just please put them in the chat box. And I will happily answer and go through questions sort of at the end of the presentation. And, you know, feel free to ask whatever you like. So a little bit about me and what to expect. So of course, we'll cover tips and tricks for finding the right school program, how to apply, what to include in your application, how to pay for it. Should you even get a degree in a creative field? How to identify the right school and program for you, what to include in your application package, funding, what to expect to maximize your experience, and my disclaimer that we only have 2 hours, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions. So right off the top, I just want to say, before we even get into this, I need you all to stop worrying about whether or not you're good enough to get into school, because the short answer is you are. It's really about finding your people. And I'll explain that as I go through. And the other big thing that usually gets in the way of people when they start thinking about this is stop worrying about how you will afford it. I will show you how to game the system. So we'll go through some of those things. And of course, gaming the system is never perfect, but I will show you some tricks to get around some of those issues. So first of all, Carolyn did a beautiful job of sort of introducing me. And I want to apologize. I had a public speaking engagement this morning. I may have used up all of my public speaking juju, so I apologize if I stumble on my words, because it was just a lot for me for one day, but happy to do it. So as Carolyn said, I've got 16 years of completely the totality of overseeing admissions for BFA, MA, MFA, and PhD programs in Canada and the US. I was a professor for a long time, for a little bit in Ontario, and then for a long time in California. And I'm very passionate about providing information about the things that they don't tell you about, the things that people aren't really clear on, sort of the ins and outs that are sort of a little bit behind the curtain. That's my passion for young emerging creative professionals. So the first question is, why would you even want to go to school, grad school or undergrad, either? The first thing you have to really figure out is, what is it you're trying to achieve? So why do you even want to go to school? Do you feel like, you know, sometimes people feel like they are not sure what to do with themselves. And so they think, well, the next step, I better go to school. Some people think, well, I must do that because that will give me some sort of validity. But the question is, and the other thing, which a lot of people have been selling for all of the years that I was young, a long time ago, was you had to have a degree in order to get a job, which of course now that's different-ish. It's all ish, it seems. But the big thing is that there are some big benefits to actually going to school. You just have to decide whether or not those benefits fit into your needs and wants and view of what your future should be. And really only you can answer the question about whether or not you should go. I can show you how to easily. The question is whether or not you really need it, want it. Because I will say this, the one thing that you really need to think about is, it will be the only time in your life, if we talk about grad school, where you have 2 years to fully dedicate to your practice. And I wish I could go back and redo my grad school. I wish I could have 2 years of nothing but that dedicated sort of inquiry into my practice again. Um, I can't go back in time, but if you're going to do it, you have to do it wholeheartedly and fully commit, because that's how you get the most out of it, which then talks about the value. What are the reasons and benefits? It's not what you know, it's really who you know. Within the art world, within any creative industry, honestly, your network is going to be the biggest thing that propels you into what you do further on. One of the number one reasons I suggest people go to school is actually to build that network. The people that I went to school with are some of the most beneficial individuals in my creative community, because they have helped me get jobs. They have helped give me opportunities. We help each other find different opportunities, and it really makes a humongous difference. So it's not just the school and the faculty, but it's the fellow students. It gives you opportunities to try out different jobs, or not jobs, sort of I guess things that you can do within your field. When I started my undergrad, I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted to go to school for art because I wasn't really good at anything else. And I have a BFA and an MFA. I'm an installation artist who works in sculpture and video, which I haven't practiced in a long time, because when I became a professor and then a curator later, it takes up a lot of your creative juice. I'm just getting back into creating work now. However, when I started school, I had no idea what I was going to do. I started getting little odd jobs around school because I spent so much time there. One of the things they had me do in my second year was actually, I was in charge of the portfolios for the incoming grad students. And I was in charge of putting all of, and this is going to age me, but I was in charge of putting all the slides into the projectors and actually going through them, making sure their applications were complete. This was in my second year of undergrad. So that was incredibly telling. The other job that I was given was, we had a gallery on campus in our building, but no one really programmed it. And so they said, oh, you want to program it? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so I started programming our university gallery, and it was fantastic and fun. And that really sort of led into jobs when I went into grad school, and it led into jobs when I graduated, which brings me to where I am today. So it really is in the who you know, not what you know. However, some of the what you know can help you figure out who you should know. Ultimately, though, a degree is nothing but a very, very expensive piece of paper. And the paper is not really worth anything. It just costs you a lot of money to get. There are definitely times where it's advantageous to have it. And there would be times where if you didn't have it, it will be harder. It puts more obstacles in front of you. When you actually have the degree, some of those obstacles sort of dissipate. But ultimately, you have to make school work for you. So why grad school? Artists decide to go to a master's program for a number of reasons. Most typically, what a lot of people don't know, and I'll talk about this later, but to receive an MFA. An MFA is a terminal degree. A terminal degree is essentially a fancy word for the highest degree you can achieve in your field. In order to teach college or university level, you must have a terminal degree in your field. An MFA allows you to teach at the college and university level. Much like a PhD is a terminal degree in history, and that allows you to teach at the university level if that's something you want to do. So some people go for an MFA for that reason. Yes, there are PhDs in visual arts. However, those aren't recognized as terminal degrees for teaching at this point. Some people go to focus on their practice, because like I said, it's the only time in your life you're going to have those years dedicated to doing nothing but focusing on your practice. To form a network of supportive artists, mentors, and professional colleagues, to learn more about how to operate as an artist in the world. Sometimes schools say that, sometimes they will teach you that, sometimes they won't. But some of the experiences you can have absolutely teach you those things. And to study with and under the instruction of an accomplished working artist as your faculty. So you've decided to go to school. You've decided, okay, I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to go to school. What's next? How to start looking. What are you looking for? What do you want to do? So the first thing you have to figure out is what degree do you want? I just told you about the difference between an MFA versus an MA. So if there's people that will go to school for an MA in visual arts, but that's not a terminal degree. Only the MFA is. There's a slight difference, and it depends on the school what the difference is between the two, but ultimately it's about the research of the MFA is what makes it a terminal degree, and a thesis, the thesis piece, which is delivered orally in a defense. The MA often has a written thesis, but not necessarily an oral defense. Not always. That's not a hard and fast rule. The biggest thing, though, is what to watch out for. So terminal versus not terminal. Do you want to get a PhD? Sometimes I think, like when I'm not sure what to do with myself or to do next or to do in the world, or, am I done doing what I'm doing, or am I going to do more? I sometimes fantasize about going to school for a PhD, but I have 2 kids and a job, and it gets tough. Maybe one day I'll decide to do that. Who knows? Maybe I won't. I'm not sure. There are other kinds of degrees out there that you'll see. You'll see an MAA. You'll see other things. The biggest thing is to decide what you want your degree to be able to do for you. When I made the decision to go to school, I, of course, wanted the MFA. Only learned later on that some people chose sort of different paths. I wanted to get the best bang for my buck. I figured if I was going to go and I was going to do this, I wanted to get the highest level and the most sort of in-depth degree I could get, which was the MFA. The reason I bring up the MAA and why you should always look at this whenever you're looking at schools is I remember when Emily Carr first started offering their graduate program, and a lot of people don't know this background, but originally when it first started, it was an MAA degree. It's now an MFA. And the reason was, though, and this is kind of important, it's why AU Arts only offers the MFA in craft at this point, is you have to petition the government as an institution. So Emily Carr had to petition the government of BC to offer the graduate degree. Well, UBC, and I think might be Simon Fraser, already offers an MFA. UBC specifically told the government no, that they didn't, because usually when someone asks to offer a new degree, the government will tell the other institutions that already have that degree that someone else wants to offer it. UBC pushed back and said, no, that will take away from our market share of students. And so Emily Carr was only allowed to offer the MAA for a couple years. And people were going into that program, students were going into that program thinking it was an MFA and not realizing the difference. And the biggest difference is the degree, the education was the same, but the degree wasn't, the piece of paper wasn't, and so it wasn't considered terminal. And I'm sure maybe it was grandfathered back in. I don't know what happened with students that actually did the first couple of years of the MAA, but always, 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 that detail is super important. Okay, the other thing you need to start looking for, studio versus theoretical. The difference there being, are the classes in that program that you're looking at, or are you looking for a school or a program that you're spending a lot of time in the studio actually making work, or are you spending a lot of time in class discussing the work or looking at the theoretical aspects of the work? And different schools usually, so I did a much more studio-based BFA and I did a more theoretical-based MFA. There was still studio component for sure, but there was a lot more emphasis, excuse me, a lot more emphasis on the theoretical underpinnings of what it was we were doing. It was a good balance. Ultimately, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was too theoretical, but it's something to keep in mind when you're looking at that. How do you know that? I can sort of unpack that for you a little later. Sorry, when we go through a little bit more about the faculty. The other thing, and I noticed a lot of students in Alberta would always ask me specifically about what I called the fast degrees, which were the 12, 18-month MFA programs. And sometimes, so the general rule of thumb was that MFA programs were 2 years. That's the standard. Then some programs moved into 3 years. A lot of the 3-year programs, just FYI, they're more theoretical. the 12-month to 18-month sort of fast-tracked ones, I want you to be very careful when you're evaluating those, because sometimes you're not going to get the full, I'm going to say, experience, but there's things that happen in that 2 years that are actually really important. There's reasons in your life that you need to do a fast-tracked one. That's fine. But then I'm going to ask you to specifically do a little bit more research about a couple different things. So if anyone's actually looking at something like that, you might want to reach out to me. And we can talk about that a little further if anyone has questions. Specialization. So if you're a glass artist or you want to be a glass artist, don't go to a school that doesn't offer that. I think that's pretty straightforward. However, you would be surprised. Make sure that wherever you want to go, where you think you want to go, actually has the facilities that you need to actually create the work, and make sure that they have enough facilities that you could maybe branch out and even experiment in some ways. So make sure that that's the case. The other is studio space. So do you have a shared studio space or a private studio space? When I was going to get my MFA, I went to California. A friend of mine went to the Slade in England, and she was shocked to find out that the studio space that had been promised to her was actually a very large room that about 12 graduate students shared. And she felt like she kind of got ripped off. I don't know. I've seen that work good and I've seen it work not great. So it kind of depends what you make of it, but that's something to keep in mind. Let's see. Someone wants clarification about what an MAA is. Just want you to know, so the MAA, it was a Master of Applied Arts, is what I think the specification of it was. But like I said, it was the degree, it was a master's degree that, and they called it, so they wanted the MFA, UBC said no. The MA would be the more class-based master's degree. The MFA, the reason it's an MFA is because it's studio. There's a studio component, a making component, which is why they called it the Master of Applied Arts. Applied being the making, I guess, the doing. But like I said, it was only because UBC got in the way. So those are the things you should be looking for when you start looking at this stuff. Oh, now, of course, hang on 1 second. Oh, there we go. Okay. Things to look for, first and foremost, what's your goal? And the idea of going to a big school versus what's closest. When I talk to people about what's your goal, I really need you to step back and think about what's the goal, what's a dream? What's your dream that you wouldn't necessarily say out loud to anybody? What's a dream that you're not even sort of comfortable admitting to yourself? Is it to, is your dream to, represent Canada at the Venice Biennale? Is your dream to show at the National Gallery? Why am I, you know what I'm talking about, the National Gallery in Ottawa? Is your dream to show at, the Met in New York? What's your dream? Is your dream to be, the next multi-million-dollar artist? What's your dream? And I want you to get really big with that. Like, I really want you to think about that and then start working back from there. Because whatever your big dream is, first of all, I'll tell you this, it's absolutely achievable. Absolutely achievable. There's people I know that have gone on to get their big dream. And I can tell you that you would have never guessed that they would get their big dream, 20 years previously, but they did. And there are some very specific steps in order to get to those places. And one of the first things is what school do you go to? So if you look at the big artists, a lot of them went to the big schools. Not all of them, though. And you have to think about how many obstacles am I going to put in my way, or how many obstacles am I going to remove? So between you, where you are right now, and your big dream, it's just like, do I want to get a degree? Well, you don't need one, really. You don't need one, but do you? Maybe. And I'll tell you why. Like, sometimes I know curators specifically, once you get up to a certain level of showing, if you don't have a degree, it will hold you back. Is there a way to bust through that wall? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. Do you have to be a little bit lucky? Yes. Do you want that obstacle in your way? That's up to you. Same with, having your work shown at very, very prestigious places. Is there a way to get there? Absolutely. Will a degree help you? Yes. Will going to a big school help you? Yes. So, but then I know you're going to worry about cost. How do I get in? All of those things. We'll go through that. And sometimes you don't have to go to a big school, but you might need to be in a big geographical area. And some people choose, and it works, and it doesn't create that big of an obstacle, but it does create an obstacle, is staying sort of with what you're familiar with, or staying, not going to the big school, quote unquote, but actually instead, like some people need to stay in the province, close to home, whatever, within the country, something. There's lots of reasons for lots of things. There are still ways. It just creates a little bit more of an obstacle, and you'll have to work a little bit harder at the networking, but it's doable. But what I'm going to talk to you about is, let's remove as many obstacles as possible so that you have a better chance of getting to that big dream. Geography, this is where this fits in. A long time ago, someone said to me, if you're going to go to art school, why in the world would you go somewhere that's not near an art center? It's kind of a good point. Depends on what your goal is, of course. But if you want to be in the big time, you have to be near an art center. Otherwise, you won't have the exposure to the arts that an art center, and when I say an art center, so in Canada, that would be Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. In the US, that would be New York and LA, and then, you can look at Europe, you can look at Asia, you can look lots of places. Wherever you are, you have to sort of decide whether or not you want to be near an art center. Now, an art center, let's take LA, for example, you don't have to go to UCLA. There are other schools within there that, like within that area, that you can go to. Just like you don't have to go to Yale, you don't have to go to Columbia, you don't have to, but you could go to Rhode Island, and it's close enough to New York, those sorts of things. You don't have to go to OCAD. You could go to York, there's lots of different reasons why someone would pick one school over another. Specialization. Oh, the other thing about geography, go where you fit in. I'll talk about this more as we go through this, but when I was applying to graduate school, I don't know why, I have no idea, I even think back now, I kept gravitating towards East Coast US schools. I went to an undergrad program that really sort of pushed students going into the US, and I don't even remember why, but they had big dreams for all of us. And we were sort of pushed to kind of look for graduate school in the US. I was looking at East Coast schools, and it took an outside art visiting artist saying to me in a studio crit, they said, why aren't you looking at, California schools? And I said, I never thought about it. And they said, like, why? And I said, well, I don't know. In my head, I'm thinking like California's earthquakes and forest fires, and, why do I want to go there? And it turns out that the work I was making, it was much more in line with the aesthetic coming out of the West Coast than it was with the aesthetic out of the East Coast. And to be really, I'll do a really bad sort of surface critique of that, is essentially New York is very much formal. It's a formal sort of environment when you're looking at visual art. It's very much a white boys club, and it's very pinned in sort of theoretical concepts that are around just for the formal aspects of the creative discipline. When you look at West Coast, it's more feminist. You have, a lot of different sorts of work that's coming out of the West Coast. And when I started looking and going through what I'm going to explain to you guys as far as the steps of finding schools, they were absolutely right. I don't know why I was looking at East Coast schools, but the fact is that really when I started looking and going through the steps of how to find a school, then that's when I realized I had to look at the West Coast. Specialization. So is there a school or geographic area that's known for your technique or specialization, or even what it is you're interested in? Often when people are making work or creating work, there's some sort of conceptual idea behind the work. My work was really sort of based in memory. It was very feminist. It got a little bit formal as the years went on, but it was so much more West Coast than it was East Coast. And funny thing enough, if I had applied to East Coast schools, I would have never gotten in. It didn't make any sense for me to go East Coast. There would have been no one there who would want to work with me because none of my advisors would want to work with me, which gets me into the next piece. The faculty, it isn't all about you. One of the biggest secrets I'm going to share with you is that the role of the graduate advisor is what's going to get you accepted into school. And this is where I say it's not about whether or not you're good enough. The only way to get accepted is that someone on faculty sees your work and decides that they want to work with you. That is how you get accepted. So when you see schools that have 400 applications and they only admit 20 students, it's because the faculty wanted to work with that student. So if you are applying to schools where there's no faculty that really, when I say this, it's not that their work looks like your work, it's that their ideas, their concepts are similar to yours, or could be an offshoot of yours. The other thing is how you present yourself in your statement of intent or your personal statement about what it is you want to do when you're there, and how you come across. If you say that one of the things you should always look for faculty before you apply, because you want to go to a school where you're actually going to have someone that you can work with. But really make sure that wherever you're applying, there are faculty. The rule of thumb is you should always apply to a school if you have to find 3 faculty on their faculty staff who their work resonates with you, and you think that they would be good mentors to you. Then you have to be able to talk about that in your statement. That is how you get in. If a faculty doesn't say they want to work with you, your application will never get through first review. That's the big secret. So it really is just about finding your people. There we go. Identifying schools. But how do I find these schools? How do I find this faculty? You go on Google, or you go to, I don't know, I think there's something called gradschools.com. Who knows? There's all sorts of things. There's a couple ways to do this where you can kind of get it narrowed down. But I know that some of the things are going to still be worrying you in the back of your head. Am I good enough? How can I pay for it? I'm going to show you how to actually evaluate schools to decide that you can go, because they'll pay for you to go. And there's people there that you actually want to work with. So first of all, when you're going to apply, I really suggest 6 schools. Now, don't forget there's application fees, but I always say pick 2 safe schools, 2 dream schools, and 2 wild cards. Your wild cards, you can use whatever criteria you like, or you can add 2 dream schools or whatever, but it's totally reasonable to have 2 safe schools and 2 dream schools, and then whatever you want. But how do I find this information? The College Art Association has a website, which I really highly suggest you go and just peruse generally, and you'll see another link to their website later on. They have something called the CAA directory, and it's a directory of graduate programs. Now, this particular directory covers studio art and design, art education, film production, conservation, historic preservation, financial aid, special programs, all those things. They have another one that specializes in art history and a few others. And I haven't seen any other directories like this for other disciplines, like for music or theater. I'm sure they got to be out there. I have been looking. If anyone knows, please tell me. But the one nice thing, even if you're not a visual artist, to use these directories will help you figure out what you should be looking for. And that is a real big key. And I'm going to show you that right now. Hang on. Okay. So in this guide, first of all, you open it up and it looks like a shopping list. It's not very pretty. It's not designed very well, that's for sure. The one thing I will say about this, though, this directory, I actually had the job of the College Art Association is essentially an academic geared association that it's North American, but it's very much geared through the US. And they sort of have a lot of guidelines and standards for a lot of things. And I'm going to show you their website in a second. But in this directory, they send out an information sheet to all the schools that have grad programs. And this is all self-reported. So this is stuff that you won't find on school websites. and it's incredibly helpful. So I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, so this, and I highlighted this and I just picked Alfred. And I don't know if any of you know what Alfred is. Alfred is actually a really, really well-known university for craft. So if you have any sort of craft inclinations, Alfred is a major player. So, and it happens to be one of the first ones in the directory that I think is really good to have a look at. So I'm going to show you all the different pieces. And remember, this is all self-reported. So private university, nonprofit, this is in the States, and there's Canadian institutions as well. And I'm happy to show you those if you want. So basically the biggest thing you're looking for whenever you're looking at a school is who are they accredited by. Always make sure that you look and make sure they're accredited by a government, state, federal, mostly it's usually state and provincial, but always make sure they are accredited because, as you know, there's a lot of what they call diploma mills these days, and there's a lot of schools that you could go to that aren't great, that are exceptionally expensive, and that you're not going to get sort of the education that I hope you get. How about that? Degrees awarded, they only do master's degrees, concentrations in ceramics, digital media, glass, and sculpture. So this is where I go back to specialization or specialties, make sure they have the facilities you need. If I'm a painter, I'm not going to go to Alfred, clearly, right? If I'm a filmmaker, I'm not going to go to Alfred. If I'm, into glass, yeah, I might actually really look at that. This little paragraph, this is written by the school, by the person. Usually it's the grad administrator, the grad program director. And this is stuff you won't see on their website. I'm a really big fan of this little paragraph because it will tell you a lot about the school. What I like to think of it as, if there's a snobbiness to the school, you'll see it come through in the language in this paragraph. It's really kind of crazy. So you can always look at this. The other thing is if you're looking at dance or theater or film or something else, you can still use this directory to actually look up the schools, because if the degree is the same, if it's an MFA in music or an MFA in dance, you can actually see whether or not they support their MFA students. I'm going to show you that here. So the first thing to look at is when the deadline is. Always, always, always make a spreadsheet of any of the schools you're going to apply to with their deadlines and what documentation they need, because every school is going to want something different. The biggest thing I want you to take note of, oh, and of course, application fee, make sure you have a look at that. Applications received were 190. They only accepted 17. That seems very scary. It's not. It's actually really not scary at all. Students enrolled, 34. So that means if they've got 17, that means that they didn't have a full cohort. Yep, they did have a full cohort. So it's 17 students each year for the 2-year degree. Their requirements, and I can talk about TOEFL and the GSAT and all those things if you want me to. But specifically, they talk about transcripts, letters of rec, resume, statement of interest / personal statement. I'll explain the difference of those things later. And then example of artist work. Oh, and they want an art statement. Well, that's fun. We'll go through that. Okay, so then the next thing, residency. So it's a 2-year program. Great. In graduate school studios, 1 to 5. So this is how your class size is. Total numbers of credit hours, don't worry about that. Number of students and residents, masters, there's 35 students, okay? And the reason you wanna look at that is if you scroll down here, this is the stuff that you really wanna know, okay? I'm just gonna get right to it. Ooh, tuition. Everyone always looks, how much is the tuition? Oh my God, it's $22,520. By the way, I noticed you probably noticed that this is a 2017 directory. They haven't put out, they usually did them every 2 years. For some reason, they didn't do one in 2019. And then COVID happened. So I don't know if they're gonna, from what I heard, they're supposed to be doing a new one of these. And I always check their website to see if new one's out, but all of this information is still stands. And it gives you a good idea exactly where things are at with the financial aid. And I'm gonna walk you through that right now. When I went to school in the States, and by the way, my parents did not help me at all, and I had no money. I got a full ride. And I explained to you how I got that full ride, the full scholarship to go. Otherwise, I would have never gone to school in the States. Financial aid. Types of aid available: stipend, that means they just give you money for being there. Teaching assistantship, that means you're kind of working on campus being a teaching assistant. Research assistantship, that's actually kind of cool. You're working with a faculty member, helping them with their research, and you're getting paid for it. But here's the big thing I want you to know. Tuition waiver is offered to all graduate students. Every single student at Alfred University doesn't have to pay tuition for their MFA program. And you will see most of the schools, the state schools, and the schools that are funded like that, they don't, it'll say tuition remission, it'll say tuition waiver. Those are the words you're looking for. Those are the magic words. That's your full ride right there. Because what happens is that every single one of those students either has a stipend, a teaching assistantship, a research assistantship, and that is why they have their tuition waived. And you're going to ask why. Why is the school letting me get away with not having to pay tuition? And it's funny because they actually say what the tuition is, but then they're like, no one pays it. Here's why. Most of the schools that are run by the state, the province, it's the same in Canada, but it's a little different, but I'll explain that in a minute. So state schools, we'll talk about that specifically. And when I say state, so like UC, so UCLA, UC Irvine, UC San Diego, or New York. So New York's the SUNY, State University of New York. All of those guys, they have faculty are in unions. Okay, faculty, if you're gonna, and they have large undergraduate classes. This is the other thing. If you're looking for a school that you want to have your tuition waived, you need to make sure that they have a large undergraduate student population. Reason is that they hire the graduate students to teach the undergraduate classes, okay, as a teaching assistant. There's usually a professor there, but oftentimes, like for instance, when I was in my first year of grad school, I was in charge of a 450 person lab for digital arts. I had never, like I'd done a little bit, but not a lot. And here I am in charge of a lab for 450 students. It was crazy, but it was fine. I figured it out, worked through it. But the reason why they waive your tuition is because they won't pay you enough to teach the class or be a graduate teaching assistant. The faculty union has an issue with that because you're competing for their jobs and they get paid a certain amount. So they feel like if anyone's teaching, whoever's teaching has to be paid that amount as well. The schools don't want to pay that. They just want to have cheap labor to teach these big undergraduate classes, especially like intro to art history, right? So instead they get the graduate students to do the teaching assistantship. And in order to not upset the union and the contract that they have with the union for the faculty, they waive the tuition for the graduate students. So in a way, you do get compensated, much like a faculty member, satisfies the union, you get to go to school without paying a tuition, plus you get paid. So when I was in my first year graduate school, and this was a long time ago, so the numbers wouldn't be the same, of course, my tuition was waived, which I think my tuition was 18,000 US. And I was getting paid, I think I was clearing $1,600 US a month in my first semester, first year. I think so. And I was assistant for, I think, 2 or 3. And then depending, you can get more and more classes and make more money. So I was basically getting paid to go to school. It was great. And that is how you afford it. And that's one of the big secrets. But this information, this financial aid, you won't find on their websites. It's buried, big time. And this also applies for foreign students, just so you know. Foreign students, like Canadians going into the US, whatever, it's same rules apply. So then sometimes it won't say very specifically tuition waiver is offered to all graduate students. Instead, you can go down here and look at this. Anyone who has an assistantship is going to have their tuition waived. That's the thing you need to keep in mind. Teaching assistants applications received, 30. How many were awarded? 30. And then the amount of the award stipend. Now that might be for the semester. It might be per class. I don't know. You can ask some of those questions if you wish later. Hours of work required per week, 10. Yep, it was pretty good gig. I can't lie. Maximum period of support, 2 years. Working assistantships applications received. So these ones, I'm not sure, because I also did, I took care of all the thesis digitization. That was one of my jobs, one semester. So, lots of different things. And these are the things, and it says other benefits, tuition remission, part or full. So those are the things you got to keep in mind. Now, that's great. You find a university that they're going to pay for you. Cool. How do I know if it's actually going to be good for me? Because that's actually really what you should be looking for. But I know people always panic about the money. Faculty. Okay. I really, really, really need you to pay attention to the faculty is at wherever you think you want to go. When you identify a place you think you want to go, you need to go through this faculty list. Okay. And you need to find somebody whose work resonates with yours, who inspires you, who you think you would make a good mentor. And you need to like really look at their work. And that will get into your statement a little later on. But I would go through this and I would check off all the boxes. Okay, do they have the specialization I want? Do they have the degree I'm looking for, the MFA? What's their little paragraph about? Does it give me a ugh feeling, or does it make me like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds good? Honest to God, trust your gut on that little paragraph. I'm telling you, it really does come in handy. I've never seen that go wrong. Look at how many, and sometimes, and I can show you on different pages, sometimes you have to be a little sneaky when you're reading these. You'll look at how many students are enrolled, okay? And then it won't say that everybody gets an assistantship, but if you go down, you can actually, because it will break it down here, how many actually got them. And so as long as everyone's getting them, by the way, if they have 34 graduate students and only 30 assistantships, keep in mind, they also offer stipends and research assistantships. So there's different ones out there that will still waive the tuition. So that's what you need to do. You need to definitely go through and you need to Google and look at the work and read the stuff of all of those faculty and highlight and figure out the ones that actually resonate with you. The rock star faculty, keep in mind, oftentimes they're paid, but they only teach maybe one class a year. And so sometimes you won't see them. Somebody that I had gone to school, the school I went to for, they were actually gone on sabbatical when I was there because they were working on a major show that was going to open at Basel. So I missed the person I wanted to work with. Here's the other thing. Resources and special programs. Private studios are available, unlimited hours. These are all the things that you should be looking for. And if your process requires something very specific, make sure it's in here. Look for this stuff. So that's how you read this book. And I'm happy to help anybody sort of navigate this. And I'm just going to stop sharing this and I'll go back. And if you go and go to that website, I'll actually just show you really quick because there's a couple. Let's see if it will let me. There we go. I'm going to show you. Apologies. Really quick here. Okay, so this is the College Art Association website that I told you about. The graduate directory is under publications, other publications, and graduate program directories. Okay. The other thing in here that's really awesome, I'm going to show you, is the CAA guidelines. This is kind of like the, how do I put this? It's kind of this group, the College Art Association, is essentially like the governing body of all arts, academics, and academic programs and professionalism. I don't know another way to sort of explain that, but the different guidelines they have. So there's lots of stuff about academic programs, but what's actually really helpful is tools for visual artists, artist resume, curriculum vitae. I teach how to write, how to build a CV straight from this. Absolutely 100%. Read both the artist resume and the curriculum vitae. Read through the whole thing because as you read through it, it gives you, there will be lots of sort of sections in there that it doesn't pertain to you because you have never written about any art. You have not had any publications about art. You have only had, group shows. You've never been in in certain things, but it gives you a list of things to work towards. So I used their their tool to list all the different headings that they had and be like, okay, what of these do I actually want to fulfill? Like, these are going to be check boxes for me in my career. I'm going to do these things. So I'm going to write about art and get published, and I'm going to put that down here. I'm going to have my work written about, and I'm going to have that here. I'm going to have solo shows. I'm going to have group shows. I'm going to be curated into a show. I'm going to be part of a jury, all of those things. And it helps. And it actually explains exactly how to list it properly, because you will be judged on the format of your CV. And it's almost like, if you remember, like footnote citing, your citation in your CV needs to be by the book, and the book is right here. So it will show you exactly how to list an exhibition you were in, and exactly the sorts of exhibitions you should leave out. And there's ways to massage all of this stuff, which, you know, you can figure out later. But just so you know, there's public artwork, professional practice, standards for sculptural reproduction, use of animals and humans, guidelines for presenting works in digital form, and there's all sorts of other things. Okay, this is a really, really, really great little secret tool that I have and I love. So just FYI, I'm sharing it with you. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to share this. Go back to this. So I've told you how to use the guide. And now these are the things I went through, what to look for when you're using the guide. And when I got down to, I think I had 12 schools, I started looking at their student work. So I would go on their websites and look at the graduate student work. There was one school, I was like, oh, the graduate student work is like so good. Like, it was just really navel gazing, like really sort of self, like, oh, they just love themselves. It was horrible. And so I started looking at some of the undergraduate work, and some of the professors in the graduate program taught the undergraduate, like the third and fourth years at least. And the undergraduate work was amazing. So then I went back and I looked at some of the professors that were teaching some of those classes, and I actually found professors who I adored and who actually became my graduate advisors, who weren't, you know, who people would go to school for, but who really fit with me. And I found my people. Okay, applications, what? So my secret weapons. I've already showed you the College Art Association one, the standards and guidelines. And in terms of what has to be in an application, I talked a little bit about statement of intent versus the personal statement versus an artist statement. So all applications are going to require a CV. All applications are going to require a letter of recommendation. All applications are going to require some sort of statement. Very rarely have I seen a statement of intent plus an artist statement, but let's talk about what that means. A statement of intent is what you intend to do. So what are you planning on doing? What are you wanting from the program, with a little bit about you? Okay, where a personal statement is more about you and your work, and then a little bit about what you're hoping to do. And when I say what you're hoping to do, someone who applies and says, I am going to make work for 2 years about dogs. I'm going to get into dog hair. I'm not going to talk about breeds. I'm going to talk about dog hair, dog fur, and it's just going to be about different dog fur. And that's what I'm going to do. And people that, you know, state, and I'm going to have a show at the end of my first year, and I'm going to have a show at the end of my second year, and this is what I'm going to do. And what ends up happening is you won't get accepted, because they want their, okay, think about this. Faculty, when they choose who gets in, you have to always think, whenever you're applying to anything, grants, schools, anything, what is it that, like, let's take grants, for instance. If I'm going to apply to CADA for a grant, what does CADA need? Who's CADA's master? Okay. What can I do to help CADA? So if you're an artist and you're making artistic work, it's, you know, this isn't as hard a fast rule versus when you're an organization. But generally, if CADA gets funded by the city or funded from other places, they will always put out usually their strategic plan or some sort of document about what their priorities are. find out what their priorities are that year. So let's say Kate has decided that this year they're going to focus on mental health, mental well-being. Well, if your work focuses on mental health and mental well-being, even slightly, it's really important to mention that in your application, because you will be making a checkbox for them that they're supporting an artist who supports mental health and well-being, or who's interested in investigating that more. And then when they have to do their reporting back to their funders, they can say that their strategic priority was met because they funded blah, 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 blah. And they, so many artists that actually, were doing these things that met the strategic priority. Or maybe, your whole goal is I'm going to make dog portraits and put them up in, wellness places. There can be lots of ways to connect the dots, but you have to connect the dots for them. Same with grad school applications. So when you're applying to grad school, you got to remember, who's your audience? Who's your audience? That's what I always say. Who's your audience? If you're applying to grad school and you just throw your application in, have no idea who the faculty is, no idea who you want to work with, then what's going to happen is you might not find your people who says, yep, I want that student, because that's what happens. The secret is when they're reviewing grad applications, now they do it online quite a bit now. However, they still do get together for the final rounds. Back in the day, they would get together in a room. They would bring up, and you got to imagine, so let's say a school gets 200 applications, 140 applications, and it's a statement, a CV, letters of recommendation, the application itself, documentation of the work, and you've got 200 of those to get through, and you only have a meeting scheduled for 2 hours. I need you guys to really mentally do the math here. They're not going to get through everyone's application in a really good way. So the first thing they do is they look at the work. They don't even look at your letters of rec. They don't look at your statements. They look at the work first. And so they look at the work, and literally I've sat in reviews at about more than 3 schools. Okay, so this isn't just like a weirdo experience I had at one school. More than 3 schools, this is what happened. They would start the images like 1, 2, 3. If nobody spoke up, they moved to the next applicant. You literally have 3 images to get their attention. And that's why, and I talk about, the images in portfolio, I'm like, good, like best, good, best. You have to put your best work at the front. Don't worry about chronological. Sometimes they say they want chronological. Holy cow. There's ways to massage that. But really, you have to catch their attention right off the bat. If they go through your images, someone says, yeah, I'm interested, then they're going to open up your file. They're not going to do that for all 200 applications. And so you've got to get your foot in the door. That's the only way. So the statement of intent, in your statement, when you talk about, instead of talking about what your big plans are doing about dog fur, instead you should talk about what kind of concepts you want to research. You want to research memory. You want to research, I don't know, the formal aspects of paint. You want to research whatever it is you want to research, whatever your work is about, whatever you want to deep dive into more, you state that. But you also have to, and you sort of like leave it open, like you're on an investigation, okay, when you're writing about these things. But the other thing you need to actually have to make sure that you include a little bit of a artist statement, like a little quick statement about your work. And then you have to include, I'm really interested in working with, name 3 faculty members. And after their name is, I'm really interested in working with Catherine Lord because her research on, gender dysmorphia really resonates with my practice. And I'm interested in learning much more about that. You call them out in that statement. And oftentimes that sort of thing seals the deal. But the other things that the CV, if you don't have a lot of experience showing, they want to see that you've been doing something. But if you don't have a lot of experience, it's not going to hurt you. They just want to see that you know what you're doing in terms of putting the stuff down in your CV. But the portfolio is really going to make or break you. So let's say you have video, or let's say it's music, it's digital files of sound. You have to put your best first, and then you sandwich it with good, and then your best at the end. The most successful applications, they caught their interest right off the bat. And then, okay, yep, we're going through, yep, those are good, yep. And then at the end, you got to leave them with something. You got to leave them with an impression. You got to put some of the best work at the end too, so that when they, move on, they'll still be thinking about you. Just always remember who your audience is. If you are, I don't know, into queer theory and you're applying to a cis white male school, you're not going to get in. And I know that it sounds, you got to find your people. Find your people, and that's where your opportunities are going to be. The other thing is that actually builds upon what I said in the beginning was the number one reason to go to school is to network. Your network is literally going to make or break you when you're done. The students I went to school with, like, we're all over the world. I still call on people that I haven't seen in 12 years because, for lots of different reasons, they've called on me. I have somebody who, was the dean at Cooper Union in New York, somebody that worked at the Getty, somebody worked at, like, they're all over the world. They're in New York, they're in LA, they're in Europe. And these are people I know who are in my network, who I have relationships with, who actually have helped me get to where I am today. And awesomely, I've helped them get to where they are. And that's a really cool sort of benefit of, it's like having lots of friends. And I can't say more about that. That really is the number one reason to go to school, is build that professional network that you will be able to leverage over and over and over again. Bar none. That's the most important. Okay. And like I said, how do you afford it all? When you're looking at this, always remember applications, definitely there's a fee. Look for schools that will support you and most importantly, give you the opportunities to gain work experience. If I hadn't gone to a school, my undergrad even, who gave me those opportunities, I would have never gotten those opportunities in grad school. The reason why I immediately got assistantships, and I got the most of them actually right off the bat, there's a couple reasons, is because I had actually done a lot of that work in undergrad. And so they gave me those opportunities in grad school. So I was automatically, they asked me if I would be a gallery assistant. I said, yeah, no problem. And then they gave me like a couple teaching assistantships, like I said, like the digital media one, which I was like, but it was fine. And then I did one of the research projects, which was digitizing the theses and a few other things. But later on, as I was the gallery, I worked in the gallery quite a bit. I TA'd the curatorial class for the undergrads. And then I was given an actual class to teach. I was an instructor of record in the summer between my first and second year, which then I was making good money. So I was paid even throughout the summer. And those are the experiences you want. So if you have a little bit of experience in sort of like the art world going to school, like even if you hadn't done that in school, but let's say, I don't know, you've put together shows now, or you've done different things, you volunteer with nonprofits, all of that experience is going to help you when you decide to go to school. You definitely want work experience. A fancy, expensive piece of paper is not going to get you a job, not anymore. And I think most people these days know that. I think that's why you're starting to see people sort of push back a little bit on this whole thing. Like I've seen job listings out there for like, they want 5 years of experience and this degree, but they're only paying minimum wage. And it's insane. And, I won't even comment on the state of the current economy, but ultimately, you want to be able to get some work experience so that when you graduate, you actually have some experience behind you to put on a resume to apply for jobs. Tuition remission and stipend, I think it's kind of necessary. I don't know anyone who could afford $18,000 a year. Maybe you can. Kudos to you. I couldn't, there's no way. And just the idea of taking out loans, I couldn't have gotten loans like that. Just so you know, if you do decide to take loans, you can get student lines of credit through bank. Mind you, the interest rate right now is horrible. Or you OSAP or like Alberta, whatever the Alberta loan is, but the Canada, like the student loans, the Canada and provincial student loans, they will fund you to go into the States. It's just not nearly as much as if you had stayed in Canada. I think I got 5,000 in student loans from Canada my first year, and I decided not to take any loans my second year, just because I was making enough money with everything else that was going on. I took the student loan in my first year just as a safety net because I didn't know what to expect. The AFA actually has they will fund students from Alberta who are going into graduate school. They won't fund BFA, but they will fund MFA. So look into that. You can even go and look at our video, our grant writing video that the AFA is in. They talk about it specifically. and scholarships. So in all the years I've worked in universities in any admin capacity, the one thing I will say is there were a lot of scholarships that I was not able to award because nobody applied. I can't say enough about apply to everything. I know it's a pain, but apply to everything. There were times I gave out scholarships to people because they were the only applicant. The only applicant that bothered to apply got it because there were no more. And don't be afraid to apply to the bigger ones. I had a professor, and I wish I had done this. She said to me, and it was after the fact I had gotten accepted and stuff. She goes, you really should have applied for a Rhodes Scholarship. I don't know if you guys know a Rhodes Scholar. You ever heard of that? It's pretty damn fancy. It's a really prestigious scholarship, and they only give out very few. But she said to me, she goes, when I was teaching in San Francisco, she goes, I had a student who was a Rhodes Scholar and had a Rhodes Scholarship. And she goes, there was no way she should have had it. And it turns out that very few people apply for the Rhodes to be a Rhodes Scholar in the arts. And I thought, oh, I'm going to tell everyone I know who's going to apply to grad school about that, because I really do think after my experience working in universities, seeing how few people applied to scholarships, seeing scholarships not be given out because no one applied, apply to anything that you even slightly make, if you meet the criteria of it, apply for it. You'd be surprised, you might get it. And that's my biggest piece of advice on that one. And that's kind of it. And I can go into depth on anything you want. And I know there was a question about low residency programs, and I can talk about that here in 1 second. But if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And I think usually around this time, we do a little break.
Yes, I think it would be great if we took 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you, Marianne. That was incredibly informative. So we'll take let's take a let's see, what time is it? 10 or 15.
Let's
What do
do
you
10.
say?
Let's
10?
do 10. Yeah.
Okay, it's 8:12. Let's come back at 25 after. How's that?
Sure. And I will talk
That's
about low
13.
residency programs and different things, and any questions you have through in the chat, and I'm happy to dive into sort of the nitty-gritty on any of that stuff.
Sounds great. Oh, and I am posting the link to our survey in the chat.
I
Please
just did that.
take a couple moments. Oh, you've done it?
I
Well,
just,
it's done twice now, so that's good. If we could take a moment to complete the survey, that really helps to inform us on what our programming will be for our members. Okay, we'll see you at 25 after. Thanks, Marianne.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. We've got about a minute to go. If you haven't yet, please do fill out the survey. It really does help to inform us about the kind of programming that you'd like to see here on our Umbrella Talks. Yeah. So give it another minute and you can begin the Q&A, Marianne.
Okay, I'm very interested in talking to Julia.
That was so interesting and informative. Thank you so
Yes.
much. It's been a lot to take in.
No worries. Okay. I will, can I just get going, or do you want me to wait a few minutes?
Oh, take it away.
Okay, so somebody asked specifically about low res options, and I want to speak specifically to that. The particular one that they're referencing, I'm not familiar with, but I have seen a lot of different low res options. And I will say that one of the things that you should be looking for is, I guess, so, okay. MFA programs cost a lot of money for schools to run because they need a lot of space. Art programs cost a lot of money. A lot of the sort of fast-tracked programs, in some ways, there were some that were good and there were some that were a little bit of a money grab. And you have to keep that in mind. So I looked, there's a lot of different low-res options now. I think that came out of COVID. MFA programs realized that they could actually deliver the curriculum and meet the needs of the students through distance. And what's ended up happening is you end up with some of these low-res programs. The biggest thing that I'll tell you to keep in mind when you're looking at those is, are you going to be able to build a network? Are there specific places that you are still going to be with people that will provide you that network that really is, it's really the golden egg that you're after when you're looking at going to school. I can't say that enough. So that network is going to be huge. The second thing is, what school is it through? I've seen a few. Hartford in Connecticut actually has a really great one. I saw the School of the Art Institute of Chicago has one. There's a bunch of different ones. The thing is this: if you're not on campus, you're not teaching. So then tuition remission and stipend and those things sort of go out the window. So how much are you paying for that low res option? Second is, and I apologize, I'm gonna have to, the dog, I have a dog who was at the door losing his mind when I was in here, and now he is now making noise. So I might have to let him out. Yeah, I'm gonna have to let him out. 1 second, sorry about that.
No worries, Marianne.
Sorry, I think it's the witching hour. It's that kind of night, time of night. The other thing you have to keep in mind with low res options is that if you're gonna be paying all of that money, what are you getting in return? So if you're not gonna get the work experience, or can you somehow, how much are you paying for it? Are you gonna have access to that network? Those are the things that you absolutely have to have in a program, or it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Is the piece of paper and the experience going to give you enough sort of a leg up? Then do it. It's really about sort of evaluating that program and what you're going to get out of it. Those are the ones that I think you should really be looking at. It's funny because a lot of the low res ones are talking about is they're offering them as a reaction to climate change or different things. There's ways to do it. It's just like, if you don't go to school, are there ways to, I talked about the degree sort of giving you some sort of validity, which I know is BS as much as you know is BS. But ultimately, there's other ways of doing it. If you end up not getting the degree, do residencies, do lots of residencies. You can build a network through that as well. You can build a network through volunteerism. You can build a network through lots of different ways. It's just how much do you want to invest in that? And is that going to give you what you need? Those are the things you should look for. So when you're evaluating those, are you going to have access to people that are going to help propel you forward? And then if you do decide to do it, you have to absolutely 100% give it everything you've got for the time that you're in that program, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm looking at this. Oh yeah. Okay, so AU Arts. So are we talking about the MFA program specifically? With getting like a full ride in towards the full division? The BFA. Okay, so BFA. The biggest thing I will tell you about AU Arts is their scholarships are absolutely underutilized. They have a ton of money in scholarships that they aren't giving out in their BFA program. And now that information I have firsthand knowledge of that goes back to 2018. I highly doubt they've lost scholarships. In fact, they probably have introduced new ones. You need to seriously look at their scholarships. Their system for applying and getting those scholarships, I don't know if it's changed. It was kind of a little hectic back then. It might still be then that way now. And ultimately, you get those scholarships. That is the biggest way to get your tuition, paid, is through those scholarships. Outside of that, for any BFA program, it's really hard. If you're looking at AU Arts, there are opportunities to work on campus, but they won't provide stipends or tuition waivers. You only get those when you're in a graduate level because of the teaching assistantships. I happen to know their MFA program. I don't know if it's changed, but they didn't have a lot of tuition. They didn't cover a lot of tuition for that. There's a couple reasons for it, which I won't necessarily get into, but you really need to look at, this is where evaluating the schools becomes really important. But the BFA, that's a solid program. Like the AU Arts BFA program is actually a really incredibly solid program. I would absolutely recommend it. I'll be honest with you. When I did my BFA, I was not a perfect student in high school, and I didn't have the best grades going into my undergraduate, into my BFA program. I actually I did lots of things, and it's a long story and you don't need to hear it all. But I ended up actually going to my BFA when I was a little bit older, and I actually had to apply as a mature student, and I did it slower. But it ended up costing me more money. And so I took out student loans. I was in Ontario, so I did OSAP, and I actually took out a student line of credit from a bank. And it's horrendous, and it makes you want to kind of puke all the debt you're taking on. But ultimately, I will say this, when I was there, I got a lot of work experience, and I basically never worked off campus. I only worked on campus. I was always able to sort of pay my loans. The beauty of the loans at that time was the interest rates were a little bit better, but the federal portion was much more. There's a lot more grants these days in the loan packages. So I'll tell you to keep, to put that sort of there. And the number of scholarships that were available to me, I got scholarships every year because I applied to them. It was only when I was working in universities that I realized how underutilized those scholarships are. So there's no perfect answer for funding a BFA program. Unfortunately, the BFA program is usually what funds the graduates in a lot of ways. If you think about it, there's a lot of students in the BFA programs, especially at larger institutions, not necessarily AU Arts. So then you want to make sure that whatever you're doing at AU Arts or at any undergraduate program that you're doing, is that the quality of the education that you're getting has to be there. It absolutely 100% has to be there. And I will say AU Arts has it. So, and yeah, and at least, lots of unclaimed scholarships. And that was where I, in two different institutions, one in the States and AU Arts is where I had scholarships that I couldn't give out because no one applied. If someone had just applied for it, I could have given it out. So if that gives you any indication. And they're a pain in the butt to apply for sure. But, what's the Wayne Gretzky saying? You get, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Same thing. Any other questions? The biggest thing I'll talk about something that, like, I know lots of people who have applied for schools outside of their immediate geographic area. And I know people that have gotten into major big name schools and actually didn't go because the idea of sort of leaving, they had a car payment, they had a boyfriend, they had, whatever it is you have. And it's really hard to leave your geographic area to go to school. There's options close by if that's your only option, and you want to go to school. But like I said, the biggest thing, keep in mind, you have to be, this is a transaction, right? If you're giving somebody money, that much money to do something, you want to make sure that you're getting something back in return. So whether it's the residency or it's local or whatever it happens to be, it doesn't mean that you can't still get the dream. It doesn't mean that the dream still can't work out. It just means there might be a little bit more road that you have to travel to get to the dream, but it doesn't mean it's off the table. It's really about making sure that whatever you're going to pay for, you're getting value. And that's, you have to look at, how many people in a class, how often you're meeting with your advisors, how many opportunities there are for you. Because this isn't just about like, oh, am I good enough to get in? Oh, they let me in. Yeah. No, what are you getting in return? Always think about that. What are you going to get in return? And make sure you evaluate it that way. It's so important. I'm also going to just share with you, I put a couple links up in the chat. And one of them, the one that I said statements, I'm just going to share with you because you're here, that if you go to that link, there's a whole professional development section on that website. I love those people. I know Karen Atkinson. I taught with her in California. She's the one that put that together. And that information on that website, first of all, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's free. There's stuff you can pay for, but there's stuff that's free. It is a treasure trove of information about how to do certain things. And I highly suggest you have a look at that. I, quote unquote, steal. I take lots of information off that website, and I've worked with her for a long time. She's incredibly smart. She knows what she's doing. She teaches at CalArts now. Oh, the book. The book is the College Art Association. I put it up in the chat. It's the school directory. If you go into their website, the collegeart.org, they have a tab that says publications, and what you're looking for is something that says other directories, and that's where you're going to get the graduate school directories, and that's where you go through that. And I'm telling you, even if you're looking at a school for a different discipline that's not covered by those books, it'll still tell you whether or not, like, it'll give you a good idea of what that school's about and how much they support their students. Absolutely, I can. Hang on 1 second. Okay, here's the link for the graduate directories. And the other thing, they're the same website, same organization that had the artist statement and the CV guidelines. And like I said, for years, and even still to this day, even at AU Arts, when I had to do professional development workshops, and Chris Willard would always have me in every year to do a grad school talk with his students, but I always told them to use that website for their CVs and CVs and artist resumes. And honestly, read through the information, even if it doesn't really pertain to you right now, it's worth it to have in the back of your head. Read through both, all of the information. It's long, it's super long. It's like 26 pages or so in the CV guidelines. Really worth it. Same with the graduate school directories. Really worth it. The CV and artist statement stuff is under what they called, I think it's called standards and guidelines. If you go in there, you'll find it. And like I said, the other website I suggest for artist statements, it even has budgeting, sort of digital, it has all sorts of things. I'm going to show you because it's really just that good. Oh, you can't see the link. Oh, hang on a second. I see. Okay, that's the directories link that I just did. Thank you for letting me know. And then that's the book, the one I just linked. And then this one here is for CDs and artist statements. And then I'm going to give you also my secret weapon link. The page that it will take you to is specifically, this is secret weapon. Honestly, so GYST, it stands for Get Your Shit Together, is what it actually stands for. And the website is a treasure trove of information. And that's Karen Atkinson at CalArts. And like the professional practices, this is just free resources they give anybody. It's like aging for artists, goal setting, estate planning, artist statement, time management and organization, resumes and CVs, cover letters, signing and dating your work, documentation, artwork inventory, portfolios, work samples, presentation venues, checklists and guides, condition reports, shipping and grading, presenting yourself, elevator speech, galleries, dealers, agents, and consultants, PR, marketing, and networking, letters of recommendation, proposals and grants, fundraising without writing grants, contracts and agreements. Like there's so many things. And I've worked with her on some of this information and treasure trove. And I don't share it with everybody. So, and I think like I'm a big fan. And you can pay to get like a whole kit, but the free resources are out of this world and totally worth it. So definitely check that one out. And I've actually taken some of that information, and it's actually I've been allowed to use it. She's given us permission. She's given me permission to use it within our members. So if you're a member review, you'll have access to all that information as well. And some other stuff that's coming, I won't say. But yeah, she's fantastic. There's the other thing I wanted to say, I think I had it in the slide presentation. I don't think I actually said anything about it. Letters of recommendation. I just want to talk about that. Whenever you're getting letters of recommendation, there's a trick to it. So ultimately, keep in mind that when you ask for a letter of recommendation, you need to make sure that that person wants to write one for you. A lot of people, and I'll specifically speak like faculty. So if you go to a faculty member and you're like, hey, would you write a letter of recommendation for me? And they're like, yeah, sure. Don't pursue that one. If they're like, yes, absolutely, pursue that one. Also, if you're going to ask for a letter of recommendation, make sure that the information that they need to write that recommendation, you provide them very quickly. So old school, well, some schools still require this, which is crazy. It was an actual piece of paper that you would have to give whoever was going to write the letter of recommendation for you. And so I'll tell you what the old school with the piece of paper way was to do it. If you're going to ask for a letter of recommendation and they said, yes, they were willing to write it and they seemed enthused, this is like enthusiastic consent, right? It's just like the whole consent thing. If someone enthusiastically says that they will write you a letter of recommendation, that's who you want to write. If someone sort of, yeah, I'll write you one. If they actually write you one, it's not going to be the stellar letter of recommendation that you need. I would much rather read a letter of recommendation from somebody who I have no idea. Like a lot of people always looked for the art star faculty to write them a letter of recommendation. But if the letter is no good, then it doesn't help you. It's actually going to hurt you. And there's ways that I've seen faculty write letters of recommendation that actually can hog tie you. There's certain phrases that they will use in letters of recommendation that when you read them, it sounds stupid. It sounds stupid to say this out loud, but it's the actual truth. It's like code. So sometimes I would read letters of recommendation from applicants who, these letters, they were not glowing references. They, in fact, made people question whether or not they should be admitted. And in fact, I've seen letters of recommendation keep people from being admitted, specifically because somebody just did not write a very good one. And they would use terms like decorative, or they would use like just these little terms that would turn off the reviewing committee. So when you ask for a letter of recommendation, make sure that they're enthusiastically saying yes. And then old school, we would actually take the piece of paper we would put it in an envelope that was already addressed to where it had to go with a stamp for how much it would cost to get to where it was going. And we would go to the post office and make sure that it was the right postage, so that all the person had to do was write it, put it in the envelope, and throw it in a mailbox. You have to make it as easy as possible for the recommender to write that recommendation. So let's say, digital world, it's a link that they have to go to on the school's website to put in their information and write the letter. Then when you ask them and they say yes, you say, okay, I will follow up with an email with all the information you need. You follow up with an email with your CV, your artist statement. If they don't know your work that well, or they haven't seen your work in a while, you can have images, some, not a lot, 5 maximum, images of your work, the link, and then any information that they might need, like your full name or any information, and you tell them which school you're applying to, what you're applying for. I'm applying to the MFA program at the University of Harvard in Connecticut. And, here's some information about the school. Here's information about my practice. I'm so thankful that you're willing to write this. It needs to be in by December 1st. And you send that email. You make whatever you do whenever you ask for a letter of recommendation, you make it as easy as possible for them to give you a good letter. It's really important, because after the review of the work, and so let's say there's 200 applications, they narrow it down to, I don't know, sometimes it'd be narrowed down to 40. Then they would open the files and they would start reading. And there were a couple times that the 40 ended up getting dwindled down to 5, and they had to go back and look at the work again. But honestly, when you open up those files, the first thing they read is your artist statement. Then they look at your CV, then they look at your letters of rec. Some places I've been, they look at your the work, artist statement, and then they look at the letters of rec. I've been places where they looked at the letters of rec first. So they're actually really important. So just keep that in mind. And that goes for anything, references for jobs too. You want an enthusiastic yes, not a, yeah, okay. So keep that in mind. And if there aren't any other questions, or if you think of something later, feel free to reach out to us. I'm happy to answer anything specific. Or if you come across a school that you're not sure of, you can always let me know and I can always take a look at it too.
Wow, that was fantastic, Marianne. So incredibly informative. Thank you so much. And thank you to our audience. I hope you filled out our survey so we can continue to bring these talks to you. A gentle reminder to support us in any way that you can. Please, we can use the help. And I'd like to invite you all to next month's Umbrella Talk, where we will be talking, or we will be having a discussion about musicians and mentors and mentorship in Calgary. And this will be the first of a series of talks. And with that, I would like to thank you once again and good night. Have a great evening, everyone.
I put Colleen's phone number in the chat.
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. That's good to have. It's good for all of us to have everyone's number.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I better put it in my phone right now.
And Marianne, thank you very much for your support today. Appreciate
worries.
it.
Anytime.
Okay, so can we just hang on till I
yeah.
get this phone number?
Yeah.
Of course. No pressure.
Thank you.
Jason is getting sick.
Oh.
And
Oh,
so
I
that
know.
so I'm like, oh no. So I've already taken vitamin C and
Oh.
Jason?
The kid's dad's. The
Oh,
kid's dad. Yeah.
Oh
He's-
no.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I've heard, that there's stuff around, and even COVID is starting to rear its ugly head.
It actually really is. Like
It
there
is 78% increase in hospitalizations in the last
Oh,
week.
Yeah.
wow. It's funny, I felt like I was getting a cold a couple of times and I just slept a lot.
good.
And then I was okay, I don't know.
To be honest, they're suggesting you get the upgraded booster and a
Yeah.
flu shot. And I get a flu shot every year to protect my parents. And I've been a flu shot supporter because I used to go visit my great grandmother. She was born in 1892 and died in 1997, and she was
Holy
104.
cow.
And when I would go to the old age home, we moved her out to Cochrane, even though she said we were taking away for all her friends. But she lived alone, and we moved her out to Cochrane so my mom and I could visit her every day. So my mom went over for lunch and I would stop in after work. Or if I couldn't go after work, I would go at lunch. So she got to see us every day. And after about 2 weeks of being at the Bethany, she stopped complaining that we took away all her friends. But her friends
Oh,
had all
good.
died in the 50s,
Yeah.
Wow,
So yeah,
amazing.
but I've just always got a flu shot. And it was to
I've
protect
never
us.
had one.
No.
I'm just really worried about the inflammation because whenever, like when I've had the COVID shots, my arthritis flares up from the
Oh, it's an immune
inflammation.
response. Yeah, because your
Yeah,
immune system
so
is, yeah. And that's kind of normal for any vaccine, like even the flu shot or whatever. So because what
yeah.
happens with the vaccine, it activates your immune system, right? And your
Mhm.
immune system goes in overdrive. And if there's any bit of like miswiring in your immune system where it wants to attack a party, like
Mhm.
this is
Mhm.
immunodeficiency, right? You know,
Yeah.
if it attacks your joints, then you're going to have inflammation for sure.
Yeah, so I'm haven't decided yet, you know?
I need to go get them. Can I ask a stupid question? Because it's been a couple years because I haven't gotten a flu shot in a few years. Do you have to pay for them?
No.
Oh, okay. Because
Yes.
sometimes, like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I've been places and I've had to pay for things, and then sometimes I haven't.
Yeah, the flu shot you used to pay $25 a year to get.
Okay, I'm not
Um,
crazy.
but back then I think we were also paying $45 a month in healthcare costs,
Yeah, okay. Okay.
right? And now it's all free. To be honest, I I'm not against paying for this, that, and the other.
Oh,
But,
no, it was more of just planning, like
my
in my head.
shingles,
Well, if
my
you can, yeah,
shingles
if you can
shot
afford
was
it, yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
I'm scared. I've always believed there was something wrong with my skin to start with.
Oof.
And then I had chicken pox as a kid, like every kid in my
Yeah.
generation.
Mm.
Um, and then I heard about shingles and I got scared. So I talked to my doctor, and my mom's had shingles. And so she said it was extremely painful. Well, I don't want extremely painful in my skin. So I paid for the shingle shot, which is a 2 dose. I think it's 8 months apart. And that was expensive. But again, I already think there's something wrong with my skin 90% of the time, and I'm not getting shingles. So
Yeah.
if that will protect me, I pay the
Yeah,
money.
as I get older, I think about that one, the shingles vaccine and
Do
the
you
flu
have to get it every
shot.
year?
No, no.
No,
Is
it's
it a
just
one and done?
once.
One
Yeah.
and done. They recommend a booster after I think it's 20 years.
Oh shit,
Yeah,
that's
I
worth
had a
it then.
boyfriend, a partner who got the shingles, and oh my God, the poor guy. It was
Painful,
horribly
painful. Like I
painful.
don't need
Yeah.
something painful with my skin. Like,
Oh,
oh my
no, I
God,
felt
I
so
lose my
bad
mind.
for him. Yeah.
I
So
know. My dad got this really crazy disease like a couple years ago. Actually, it started in I don't know, the last couple years. I feel like the years since COVID have just been crazy. And it's this really rare disease, and it's genetic, where your skin breaks out in blisters. It's like the stuff that keeps your skin layers together gets broken down, like your immune system attacks it, and all of a sudden his skin would start like he would just bump his arm, and it would just open into a sore, like just this
Oh,
blister.
oh,
And it's
geez.
the whole thing's itchy. He's been to special, but he got so sick because he's a dumbass and didn't go to the doctor to get this figured out. And he had so many of them that when he finally got scared, which anyway, they had to give him IV drugs like for 2 weeks to get him under control.
Oh my
ugh,
God.
Yikes.
It's so bad. And it like he's on immunosuppressant, like he's on like transplant drugs, like he's on all sorts of stuff and prednisone. It's just years of this. But his health hasn't been good in the last few years.
That's your dad?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow, I'm so sorry to hear that. That it sounds uncomfortable and painful, and yeah, it's
Well,
amazing
yeah,
what can go wrong with the body. It really is.
really. I know.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Mike's a big guy. He's 100 pounds heavier than I am and 6 feet tall. And the second COVID vaccine took him right out.
Really.
He didn't get COVID. Um, uh, but boy, oh boy, it laid him up for 2 whole days. He did not
Wow.
feel well. And
Oh, it just about
me,
killed
it
me
was,
then. Yeah.
me, it was just like getting
Oh, I was sick
I,
for weeks.
I didn't even notice it.
I thought I had long COVID there for a while, and then doctor thought so too. And then all of a sudden I started getting better. But you know what she gave me? She gave me vitamin B12 shots. She's giving me one a month for 6 months, and I'm taking this mega dose of vitamin D with that once a month. And like it's really helped.
Really.
But
So many things, like the pain, the arthritis pain. Like I wasn't even like I couldn't even use my phone, it was like
Oof.
it was getting really bad there for a while. So yeah, she says it's like there's too much stress in my life, and there has been for a prolonged period now, like a freaking decade, right? So it's affected my stomach, so I'm not absorbing the nutrients from my food, and the stress is causing the inflammation, which is causing the arthritis pain. So vitamin B12, yeah.
Huh.
Whoa. My girlfriend
and
works in the film industry, right? And I told her about it, and she goes, "Oh, yeah, I remember years ago we were all getting B12 shots on the crew because, instead of doing cocaine, we were doing B12, and it
Oh,
was like
wow.
everybody was functioning so much better on the B12
Wow.
shots."
um my friends that do steroids, if they do steroids, they also have to do B12.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I don't see much. My lifestyle isn't that health and fitness oriented anymore that I have anybody that's doing steroid injections. But back in the day, if you
Mm,
did steroids, it was a pretty good idea to go in and also get a B12 injection. And
yeah.
vitamin D, uh, like you think you spend enough time outdoors and you
You
don't
don't.
really. Like
No.
I'm supposed to take like 3,000 a day. Uh, that's shocking to me, but I've
Mm.
always lived in Alberta. So, I don't
Yeah, we're
have,
lucky here. We do get a lot of sunshine.
But it's not
but
that it's not intense enough because we're so north
Yeah.
that
yeah,
none of us in Alberta, like even the dog. I remember when I had the babies, I had to get them, they had to have vitamin D drops and vitamin D for
Mm-hmm.
so long because they were NICU babies that
Mm,
they had to have a lot of vitamin D for a long time, like till they were like
yeah.
5.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that for Aiden too.
and they say that people that want to get pregnant,
D.
vitamin D.
That's
I don't
interesting.
know what else they recommend, but I just know vitamin D. But I figure it's because we all probably need it.
Oh
I
yeah.
know whenever I have questions about supplements, I always talk to Margot because she
Yeah,
always seems to know what I should be taking.
absolutely.
And I
Where did
go,
you go anyway, Margot? Are you still
I'm
there?
I'm here, but I'm sitting here with my eyes closed. So I figured it was
Oh,
I just
yeah.
turn off.
And it's
Hey,
informal.
thanks for doing the attendance sheet. And sorry, I got grumpy at the beginning there. I was
You did
so exhausted from lugging all this stuff up the
but
stairs, and
no, you did a really great job. No, this has been like ever since a few days after I moved, I've been in really rough shape. And yesterday I thought things were getting better, and then they crashed again today. So yeah. Anyway, but
yeah.
thanks for stepping in and
Oh, yeah, I don't like last minute stuff. I kind of get
no,
flustered, but
no,
I,
I understand.
apologize for if I was grumpy with you.
Well, you were, but I can understand it.
Well, yeah, but still, like it's not I don't, I love you. I don't want to be grumpy with you.
Oh, thanks,
Oh,
sweetheart.
you should talk to my children.
What?
Damn, 13-year-old hormone craziness. One day my daughter wakes up and she's like Satan incarnate.
Uh-oh.
She hates me. I've done everything wrong. I'm a horrible person.
So yeah,
Yeah.
moms have woken up.
Oh my God, that's so much fun, isn't it?
Oh my God. It's
Did
a
they
joy.
turn 13 this year? Is it
What's
this, are they
what-
13 this year or 14?
They're 14.
Whoa, oh my God. Oh no.
It's unbelievable.
What
Yeah.
an awkward time for a kid too. Like you're awkward.
Yeah.
I don't even know how
Yeah.
else to explain it. It's just such a dorky,
Oh my,
awkward time.
you couldn't pay me
Yeah.
enough to ever be a teenager again. It would just be like, no, I'm not going back there.
The worst part is
My
the
poor
social
parents.
piece. It's like so hard to watch them go through this shit with friends and
Mm.
middle school drama. It's like, oh
When I was 14, I took my sister's ID for 21. You didn't have picture ID then, you just had ID. And my girlfriend and I, we got on the Greyhound and we went to see Johnny and Edgar Winter in Buffalo, New York. So we were in Toronto. We left the country with fake ID
Oh,
and went to a
my
concert.
God.
Yeah. She didn't even know. I told her this like a couple of years ago. She's like, what? She couldn't believe it.
I took my kids to their first concert in August.
what did you go see?
I didn't know anything about this, but his name is NF. Anyways, he's kind of like a bit of a like Eminem in some
Oh.
ways, but the message in the music is actually pretty good, so it wasn't bad. But it was great seeing them have that experience of like the crowd and the energy of like that was so much fun to see them experience. Like that was awesome. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, I got to do this with them again. And then I thought of Karen because she's such a concert lover.
Yeah, I'm like, careful, that can be a slippery slope.
I know.
Oh my God. Aiden's at the back alley tonight for the Insane Clown Posse.
I
Oh,
thought
I'm
about
afraid for him. I hope he's okay.
oh, it'll be fine. Yeah, no, they're a lot of fun too.
I know. I took him to see DOA at the border crossing when they were here. And I was like, I can't watch. He's in the mosh pit. He's going to get hurt. I can't watch. And like me, I was like, a punk when DOA started. And I was
Yeah.
like, drunk and getting pushed around and everything. But I could not look at him because he was moshing.
and
what
yet
happened?
you got on a bus to Buffalo, New York. Like honestly,
At 14.
That's crazy. I got grounded for almost a year because I got on a bus. Well, I phoned and asked my dad. I said, can I go for the weekend with some friends to Vancouver? And my dad said, no. Then I asked to speak to mom and she wasn't around. And so I made the judgment call and I went with my friends on Friday night. We drove to Vancouver to see a show of Robert Plant on
Oh.
Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I was so scared, even though we got back late Sunday night, I was scared to go home. So I just went to school Monday morning like nothing had happened. And both my parents were waiting in the parking lot of the school.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
I never was so desperate to go to school and try to escape them.
Oh my God.
But,
Too funny.
yeah.
Okay,
No,
what is it? Because my sister, like, so I wasn't gonna let my daughter wanted to go. I wasn't gonna let her go, and then my sister, because when we were visiting her, my sister's like, "Are you kidding? When you were 13, you got on a Greyhound bus and went to Toronto with Amy over the weekend, and Mom thought you were like 15 minutes away." And it's true. So I have a story like that too. I went to see a
Oh.
concert in Toronto. 13, like so stupid, like dumb, right? Like anything could have happened to us. But
Mhm.
and so when I was telling my kids she couldn't go, my sister's like, you don't get to do that. So it was my sister's fault that I took my kids to the concert. I'm glad I did. But yeah, I know, like crazy. It's so
Nice.
now I'm really afraid of these 14-year-olds hearing all like 3 of us have stories of doing this. That's it. I'm locking them up.
That's okay. Most of them grow up to be pretty good adults. So
Actually, fair. That's fair.
It's a different world now. It's a
Yeah.
totally different world. Yeah.
And again, I've got metal coursing through my veins. Carolyn's a punk from back in the day,
Listen,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in Detroit. That's all I'll say. A lot of time in
Oh,
Detroit.
yeah. Yeah.
I love Detroit. I do. I actually do love Detroit.
I never went to Detroit. We went to what's on the other side there?
Windsor?
Windsor, yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Windsor for like 10 years.
Saw the Ramones there
Oh, Windsor's
in
awesome.
Windsor.
Windsor's such a dirty city. It's so awesome, though.
So
And I
is
know
Buffalo, New York.
Oh,
Ugh,
Buffalo, yeah.
it's gross.
I know. I loved I loved my time there. So many good memories.
Yeah, the city of soul music.
Yeah. We used
Detroit.
to call it Sin City. Yeah, I know. And well, Detroit Rock
Yeah.
City. Like there's so
Yeah.
many, like, oh, love Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take a nice car there, but yeah.
I've heard
Did
that
you
about
watch-
Chicago too.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is my ADD again. I'm not on ADD meds anymore, so I'm even worse. But there's City of Soul, a
What's that?
movie. Just the
Oh.
most amazing movie about a concert that they did in New York City back in the late 60s, was it, or early 70s or mid 70s? City of Soul, I think it's called. You don't know what I'm talking about?
No, but I'll look it up because that sounds
Best-
good.
Best music movie you could ever see, next to like maybe The Last Waltz or something. It's amazing.
Well, I'll watch that if you watch a movie called Searching for Sugar Man.
Oh, I've seen it.
Oh,
I
I
saw
love that.
him. I went to see him.
Really?
Yeah, at
Oh,
the
that's
Jew.
awesome.
Oh, yeah, wasn't that
Like
amazing?
Danny Sugarman or
No, okay,
No,
Danny Sugar. That's funny. I don't know anyone else who would bring up Danny Sugarman. I am a huge Danny Sugarman fan, so that's hilarious. I've read his book and Wonderland Avenue. You've read that? Oh my
Yeah.
God, we should have a talk about that. No one's read that. I've never met anyone who's read that.
I don't know who this is. Who is it?
He was kind of like a groupie, but then sort of like worked with the Doors in
Oh.
LA. But his life is like really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But Searching for Sugar Man, it's about, I don't know how to explain
Yeah,
it very
Karen,
well.
you got to see that one
It's
too.
so, Karen, you would love it.
right?
Yeah, he just died. He just died not long ago.
Yeah, I know. And it was so crazy. Like, what a crazy story. Like, he was this musician who wasn't very well known here, but he turned out he was like rocking the world of South Africa.
Yeah.
And he had no idea. And like his fans came to find him.
Wow.
It's a really crazy, it's like so good. It's like really about music, really, really good.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a
I
documentary.
have to admit, I watched the documentary they put out about the 1992, I think it was 92, the 25th anniversary of Woodstock.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think if I saw
okay,
I've
that's
seen a
the
few of those.
music of my life, right? Like I am not just a metalhead, I'm a born thrasher.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
a hippie. A
Pardon?
hippie at heart.
Yes. But I fall under thrash is the type of music that I particularly like.
Oh, yeah.
And it is extremely critical of it. And it was, I look back at the time, and at the time, I don't think it really fazed me. But looking at it through today's lens, it was kind of shocking. I was thinking I would never participate in that.
Yeah, you would have.
Yeah, you're right. I was
Yeah.
wholeheartedly in the middle of it, and
Yeah.
just it being looked at so critically with today's eyes. I didn't come out of it feeling proud, that's for sure. But I enjoyed the movie. Like
Oh,
it
I
was
should have a look out for
interesting
that.
to see it.
Yeah.
But it is really hard on the music that I still love, right?
Huh.
Mm.
Hmm.
Summer of Soul.
That's what it's called. Okay.
2021 American independent documentary film about the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival.
Huh.
It is amazing. One of
Wow.
the best films I've seen, like music films ever.
Cool.
I guess you can watch it on, I think I watched it on Disney Channel.
Oh, I will look for it.
Yeah, you gotta see it. It's the best. Hulu has it.
The dog
Anyway.
just broke into the room.
I gotta go
Way to go.
bathroom.
Okay.
Okay.
Stop the
Good night,
recording.
everybody.
I can't stop it. Or did I stop it?
No, it's still
Oh,
recording.
sorry. That's okay. I edit it.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah, I always edit those bits